Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and today I'm back with my July reading wrap up. July has been an excellent reading month. I think I said in my June wrap up that I'd had probably my best reading month of the year, but this month is definitely better. I read 10 books in July and I also DNF'd 2 books, so I'll talk about those at the end. The 10 books that I read, I would say 9 out of 10 of them are I really highly recommend, really enjoyed them. Yeah, I'll talk about all the books I read. I'm going to go favourite to least favourite, but sort of take that with a pinch of salt because when I was organising these this morning, I was struggling, so it could be a different order on a different day. So my favourite book that I read this month, I read in a reading vlog, and that's Tar Baby by Toni Morrison. I really don't like this edition of this book. It's all not sure about it. Anyway, this is my second Toni Morrison. I had read The Bluest Eye before, and I liked The Bluest Eye, but I didn't really fall in love with it. But this, I was like, okay, I understand why people really love Toni Morrison because her writing is so incredible in this. I feel like this was sort of a perfect book for me. I really loved the setting of this. It's set in this sort of rich white man's house in on a kind of private island in the Caribbean, and it's about him and his wife, and then his 2 servants who are black, and their niece who is staying for a while. And then a young black man who has sort of escaped from prison turns up to the house as well. So there's quite a big cast of characters and they're all quite quirky, especially the owner of the house. His name is Valerian. His family owned this big sweet company in Philadelphia that he took over, so he's really rich because of that. He is really obsessed with his greenhouse and he's always there playing classical music. His wife is quite a lot younger than him and she was sort of like a beauty queen when she was younger. She doesn't really want to be in the Caribbean, so he's now retired and moved there from Philadelphia, and yeah, she's not so sure. And then the niece of his servants, the white family have really helped her out. So Valerian has paid for her education. She lives in Paris most of the time. She's a model. She goes to the Sorbonne. She's very well off because of her aunt and uncle working really hard for this rich white man. So it's all very complicated with class. The tensions really start to build in it, and there are loads of dinner party scenes that are really high tension. So I really enjoyed this book. I did not know where it was going to go. The writing was incredible. The way Toni Morrison writes, some of the descriptions in this were amazing. So I completely fell in love with this. I know that this is one of Toni Morrison's lesser liked books, but as I say, I've not really read her big books. So I've not read Beloved, I've not read Jazz or Home or Sula, so I can't really compare. But yeah, I absolutely love this. This is an easy 5-star read for me, and I'm really excited to pick up basically whatever Morrison writes next. And then I think because I enjoyed that book so much, especially because of the writing, I was really keen to pick up more books this month that really had beautiful writing, which I think I've done quite well. And I think that's why I've had such a high success rate, because it was just what I was in the mood for. I really wanted books that had really descriptive lyrical language. So then my next book is Search Sweet Country by Kojo Laing. This book has been on my shelf for I think 3 years, and I feel really bad that I've not got to it because I fell in love with this book as well. This is an incredible book, and I think this is a right book at the right time for me, because as I say, I was really in the mood for descriptive writing, and this book is the descriptions in it are so crazy. The way he writes is incredible. I had tried to read this book twice before and got about 20 pages in and was like, I'm not sure this book is for me. But for some reason I kept it on my shelf, and then when I picked it up this time I was like, why did I not like this? This is amazing. So Kojo Laing is a Ghanaian author, and this is set in the mid-70s in Ghana. Ghana's just gained its independence and it's sort of trying to find its feet as a country. We follow sort of a cast of connected characters, and each chapter throughout the first half of the book is following a different character, and then towards the end of the book you revisit characters and see what they're up to. So yeah, you have, for example, an old man who is trying to found a village, but he's just really like a drunk old man that's going around on his donkey sort of shouting at people. You have a man who leaves his native village to try and farm this forest, and he sort of loses himself in the process. You have a woman who is flying about at night trying to like sort of like an angel type figure that is trying to help all of these lost people find their way in life. So it's sort of got some magical realism in it, but not too much. Like it's definitely more realist. Yeah, I think that what this does really well is like if you're going into this looking for plot, like that's not what this is. It's but what I think it does really well is because you visit so many different characters, it really builds up a picture of like what Ghana's like at that time. Just kind of what it says in the back. It says that his dazzling novel creates a portrait of a place caught between colonialism and freedom, eternity and the present. And that's really the sense that you get. People are trying to find themselves, but also sort of figure out what Ghana is going to be. It's quite a corrupt place. You sort of follow characters that are trying to deal with that. They're sort of caught in a situation where they have police going after them for something that they've not really done. But yeah, I'm going to read a little bit of the writing because I think like you really need to get a sense of what it's like. This is just a sort of descriptive bit of the start of a chapter. The city held the neck of the crow. The early November mist was stuck to grass and gutter, roof and valley, like endless chewing gum locally made. The mist would not be imported. Over where the early risers walked, the quiet street branched into the long thighs of a woman sleeping. Accra was a cola nut in the mouth of a malam, hurrying to spit it out, and the sun was bad. At last it found the shoulders to push aside the lazy mist. Mist slept a low sleep, and its rays caressed thousands of legs, brown and unbrown, shapely and unshapely. The cries of goats steadied the concrete in a bank building, and pushed Kofi Low in no particular direction, but certainly towards his own sense of being. So the writing is so beautiful, but also he uses description in a really interesting way. There's a lot of personification of inanimate objects. The trees really have like a big part to play in the sort of creating the atmosphere. And the buildings as well, and I think that's sort of you sort of have this juxtaposition of urbanization and then sort of back to the sort of rural roots of Ghana as a country, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I would really highly recommend this one if you're looking for something that's a little bit different. I've never heard anyone speak about this. I picked this up in Waterstones, like as I say, 3 years ago, just because I liked the cover and I kind of liked the description in the back. But yeah, I've never heard anyone talk about this, so I'd really highly recommend. And then a couple of books that I spoke about in another reading vlog. I was reading some translated books for a week, and the first of those is You Doomed of Empires by Alvaro Enrigue. I really have highly anticipated this book for quite a while now. I read his first book maybe 7-8 years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but this I think was even better. This is a historical fiction, and it's all told in the course of one day, and that day is the day where Hernan Cortes first meets Moctezuma, who is the sort of Kalua emperor in Tenochtitlan. So this is a historical fiction like no historical fiction I've ever really read, because yes, it's set over the course of a day, but it's very playful. It's sort of playing with time. It has nods to the fact that this is a long time ago, that we know what happens. Although I personally like, yes, you know the outcome of the conquistadors, but I didn't personally know the history, this story. So it's definitely playing with the historical fiction narrative a bit. Like it's almost like a nod, wink, wink, like we know what happened. Which I really enjoyed. You follow a huge cast of characters in this. You have Hernan Cortes and his 2 interpreters. You then have a couple of other sort of generals in his army. It's not really an army, but you know what I mean. Then you have Moctezuma and his wife, who's also his sister. You have like his advisor and sort of the heirs to his throne, and yeah, just a couple of other people, and you follow them throughout the course of this day. Moctezuma is like, he's sort of lost control of, not of his empire, but of the situation, I guess. He he let the conquistadors into his city because he was really obsessed with their horses, because they didn't have horses in the Americas, and he was like, wow, these creatures are amazing, they're like domesticated deer, we need them. And that's basically his reasoning. He's taking a lot of hallucinogenic drugs and he's kind of like lost the plot a little bit. So that was a really interesting character to follow. The descriptions of Tenochtitlan in this book were incredible. I think that Alvaro Enrigue, from I read the acknowledgements at the back, and it seems like he'd done an awful lot of research into the like archaeological history of the city, and he really brought it to life. There was like a lot of description of like their clothes, the sort of the way that they're both the Spaniards and the Kahlua people are judging each other. Kahlua people are kind of like laughing at the ridiculous peasant clothes that the Spaniards are wearing, and the Spaniards are very confused because all of the people in all of the sort of noble people have these ridiculously big hats with feathers. They have these like fetish priests that do a lot of sacrificing, and they go for a lunch at one point, and they're like really, the Spaniards are really disgusted by them. They like absolutely stink of like blood and yeah, from all their sacrificing. But at the same time, everyone is like, these Spaniards smell disgusting, they're all sweaty. Yeah, I really, this is quite a short book, but I would highly recommend it. I think that Alvaro Enrique has done such a good job of creating a very immersive world. And I didn't know where this book was going. Like, as much as I say, you know the story, like I didn't know where the end of the book was going, and it was a very interesting ending. So I would definitely check this one out. Another book that I read in that reading vlog that I also absolutely loved is Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector. This is my second Lispector. This has been a month of me trying authors for the second time and really getting on with their second book, so that's great. This is the first book that she ever wrote. I'd read The Hour of the Star before and I just struggled to get into it. It's very, very short. This is quite short. I think it's about 195 pages, so it's definitely like novel length, but short. And I think I finally understand the Clarice Lispector thing, so I'm really happy about that. Because she's an author that I just thought wasn't for me, because I tried one book, I heard people rave about her, and I was just like, I just don't think it's for me. But having read this, like, I'm in, I want to read more. This, I think, is one of her more straightforward narratives, although definitely plot is not a big part in Lispector's work. So this book follows a young woman called Joanna, sort of throughout her life. So it starts with her childhood, and you then follow her. It's like sort of following her throughout the course of her life up until her marriage, but it's definitely a very internal monologue. She's trying to get to the root of things. She wants to be free, but not just like free from other people. She also wants to be free to create new things, but she's a bit concerned that there is nothing new, that any thought that she has is not original, so she's really focused on that. Her husband is also a very introspective person. He bases his relationship sort of on the inner connection that he has to people, while also understanding that you can never fully know the like inside of a person, I guess. So it's very reflective and philosophical, but the way that she writes, again, is just incredible. Let me see. So for example, this is like on the first page, so I'll just read you this little bit. Leaning her forehead against the cold and shiny window pane, she gazed at the neighbour's yard, at the big world of the hens that didn't know they were going to die, and she could smell, as if it were right beneath her nose, the warm, hard-packed earth, so fragrant and dry, where she just knew a worm or two was having a stretch before being eaten by the hen that the people were going to eat. So it's like very much like that throughout, sort of like amusing at points, but while being very introspective. I would definitely recommend Clarice Lispector, but just know what you're getting yourself in for. Some of the things that she thinks are things that I've never thought before, but when you read them, you're like, oh wow, yeah, that is like makes sense. But yeah, definitely very introspective and philosophical, so just be warned. And then another amazing book that I just finished 2 days ago is The Well of Loneliness by Radclyffe Hall. I bought this book quite recently, like in June, and yeah, I don't know, I just had an inkling for it. It's quite long, it's almost 500 pages, and this is sort of an LGBTQIA classic. It was written in 1928, and Radclyffe Hall was friends with. I believe Radclyffe Hall was part of the Bloomsbury Group. This, I think, is her most well-known work. I'm not sure what else she's written. And I thought this book was going to be very, very sad, and while it is sad, it's not despairingly sad. So this is about a young woman called Stephen. Her dad wanted a boy, and so he'd already picked out the name Stephen, and he decided to call her Stephen. And she grows up and realizes that she's quite different to other people. She's a very, very good horse rider. She's very good at fencing. She's very physically fit, and she sort of realizes, everyone realizes even before she does, that she's not interested in men. And also she sees herself sort of as a man. She dresses in suits and ties. She wants to have male friends to talk about nature and hunting and riding. Society at this time is not interested in her doing that, and this sort of saddens her, but she's also very secure in the person that she is, that she's not going to change for other people. She is the way that she is. Her dad is very, very supportive of her. Her mum, not so much. And so I'd say that this is why this book is not as devastating as it could have been, because I think that you follow her from as a child up until the age of sort of her mid-30s, and throughout her life she manages to find people that really have her back, that support her, that understand what she is, if you will, and really support her because of that. She has a governess who sort of stays with her throughout the course of most of the book, and their relationship is really sweet. She is also a lesbian, but is never sort of come out as such, and so she completely understands what Stephen's going through. I won't really give any more of the plot than that, because quite a lot happens. It's kind of spoilery. You're never going to fit into mainstream society at that time if you are gay, because it just wasn't accepted. But the society that the sort of friendship she makes in this book, and the other people that she finds in the same situation as her, is a great comfort to her. So yes, what's called the Well of Loneliness, she's not completely isolated. What I really also loved about this book is the nature writing. I wasn't really expecting that, but there's this real sense of place throughout the book. Stephen is very rich, and she grows up in a sort of big country estate, and that is incredibly important to her. Her sense of home, she's got her horses there. She loves nature, and anywhere she goes, there's like a big description of all of the nature. But it doesn't matter where she goes, she really feels drawn back to this home. And yeah, I really loved this book. I thought it was incredible. I would think, if you've not read it, I would highly recommend this. It definitely feels like a very important book for its time. As I say, it was written in 1928, and the way that it discusses sexuality in this is very nuanced, and I think it almost still stands up now. She meets people throughout that are more masculine, more feminine. She meets gay men. She meets, yes, people that don't really identify as anything. Yeah, I'd highly recommend this one. And then another short wee book is Pedro Parol by Juan Rulfo. I really love this edition of this book. It's really pretty. I really love this book as well. This is a very strange book. Probably the most atmospheric book I've read in a really long time. This is about a man, I'm not sure if you know his name, but his mother has just died, and his mother tells him that she wants him to go and find his father, who's called Pedro Paramo, because he owes them money. He doesn't know his father at all, and he goes to this village to try and find him. And when he gets to the village, it's a very, very weird ghost town, basically, quite literally a ghost town. He keeps meeting people that he thinks are alive, and then they're dead. Yeah, it's so eerie. Like, it's very Mexican Gothic-y. And it seems like Juan Rulfo was a very influential author for other Latin American writers, which I can completely see. Because yeah, this was written in the 80s, and I can see how like this feels very Latin American in a way. And also it's so incredibly melancholic. Like the atmosphere that he builds in this book is, yeah, as I say, unlike anything I'd ever read. So you get a lot of these people's backstories to their life, but also sort of their death, because as I say, most people in this book are dead, um, and quite a lot of them have not had the best life. So you sort of like a cacophony of voices, just like sadness. But it's very short, and I think it works because of that, because it's not hundreds and hundreds of pages of like people telling you how they died. It is short, and it definitely packs a punch. The way that it builds up the atmosphere of this village was quite incredible. So yeah, if you've not read this, this is unlike any book I've ever read. I'd highly recommend it. And then a book that was on my summer TBR that I got to is A Room with a View by Ian Forster. I really do not like this cover of this book. I ordered it like on his online on a second-hand book website, and you just never know what cover they're going to send you. This was not the picture on the book that I ordered, but anyway, this is my third Ian Forster, and this is a very good summer book. It's about a young girl who goes to Florence for a couple of months with her cousin who is acting as her chaperone. Her cousin's a bit older. They go to this boarding house where there are a lot of English tourists, very well off, sort of elderly English people. And Ian Forster is definitely critiquing this, the way that English people go to another country and then they sort of just stay amongst themselves and talk about art and culture, but they're not really experiencing it. They all have these called Baedeker, I think it was like a sort of tourist guide type thing. They all have these books that they take with them everywhere so that they can understand what's going on when they go to churches and stuff. So it was quite funny from that point of view. His characters are almost like Jane Austen-esque. Like some of them are very ridiculous, out there characters that are definitely just there to laugh at. But I enjoy that. And yeah, while this girl Lucy is here, she meets a young man who's traveling with his father, and they offer up their rooms because they have rooms with a view, and Lucy and her chaperone don't. And they say, well, we don't care about a view, you're women, you'll care about a view, have our rooms. And this is like a big faux pas. This is like, you don't do that. And everyone else in the boarding house doesn't really like them. They're not particularly well off. They come from sort of like an industrial working class background, and they're kind of alienated, but Lucy has a soft spot for them. You move on in time, she's back in England, and there's quite a lot. This is quite a plotty book, so I won't say any more than that. I really enjoy Ian Forster's writing for sort of this social satire element of it. This kind of what he's going after, because what I found frustrating when I read Howard's End first, and I felt like the way that the scenes worked, you quite often missed a lot of the action. So something big would happen, but you wouldn't hear about it until the next chapter when someone was announcing the news. And this is the same in this, but I think you need to not read it like a normal, like it is a normal novel, but I think you need to sort of look at what it's trying to do rather than actually taking it for like scene for scene. Because yeah, there are points in this where I would have liked to have seen like what. So for example, at the end of the first section, they're about to leave Florence and go to Rome, and I was like, oh great, we're going to Rome. And then the next chapter they're back in England, so you miss their whole part in Rome, and you just hear what they got up to in Rome, sort of like here, like through one character recounting to another. So that can be a little bit frustrating. But yeah, on the whole, I really enjoyed this book. I think I still prefer A Passage to India by Ian Forster, but this one is definitely a good summer book. It's a romance. I think it probably would appeal to more people. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this one too. Next, I read Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. I've heard loads of people talking about this. I specifically heard Simon Savage talk about this. He absolutely loved it. I also really loved this book. So for a bit of context, this is a historical fiction set in Syracuse, but sort of during the Peloponnesian War against Athens, and I know nothing about that time period. I have not read a single like Greek myth retelling book set in ancient Greece, I don't think, at all. I've not read Song of Achilles or any of the big ones or any of the less big ones. I've literally not read a single one, just because I don't really know the myths very well. I'm not that interested in classical history. And there's so many of them that I have kind of at the point where I find it difficult to know where to start. And I feel like I would need to familiarize myself with the original texts before I start reading retellings. I have read some retellings that I didn't realize were retellings set in modern day. So, for example, Home Fire is a retelling of Persephone, I think. And Everything Under by Daisy Johnson is a retelling of Oedipus, I think. But yeah, it's not why I picked those books up. But I wanted to give this one a go because I had heard that it was written in sort of like an Irish dialect, and I really enjoyed this book. I think it seems, well, I've not read any of the other ones, but from what other people have said, it seems quite different from the other ones. Set in Syracuse, just after Athens have attacked them, and they have won, and this is sort of like a first decisive victory against Athens, and they have taken the prisoners of war and put them in this quarry, sort of like a disused quarry where they're feeding them quite basic rations. People can go and visit them if they sort of bribe the guards, as long as they don't take anyone out of the quarry. So we follow these two potters. Their factory is shut down, they're unemployed, and they decide that they want to put on a play, using the Athenians as actors, because one of them is really interested in Euripides, and he's like, great, we've got like real life Athenians, let's use them. And a couple of the Athenians were actors back in Athens, so perfect. This is quite a plotty book, which is like one of the reasons why it's a bit lower down in this list, just because towards the end it felt very plotty, which is not really my thing. But it's not like it wasn't unbelievable and the plot wasn't rushed really. I just felt like, yeah, it was quite fast paced. Yeah, the voice in this book is really interesting because he is definitely using an Irish sort of dialect, which works really well when you're talking about ancient Greece, because it very much makes it feel modern, but also he spoke Greek, so any sort of dialect that you use is not going to be realistic, so it's like doesn't matter. And by using an Irish dialect, you're able to make it feel very modern, feel very relevant, while still getting a sense of the sort of character that this main Potter is. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting for what it was doing about that. It was definitely, playing with history a bit, because as soon as you start to make things very like slangy, you're sort of showing that even though this was thousands of years ago, it's still relevant now. And it did a really good job of that, I thought. I don't want to say too much more about the plot, just because it was very quite a lot happened, and I think you're best going into this sort of blind. I didn't know very much about it. What I've said is basically all I knew about it, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It just won the Waterstones best debut novel, so if you are interested in it, I think it's doing quite different things to some of the other sort of ancient Greek retellings. Would recommend. Next I have Notes of a Crocodile by Chi Miaojin. I read this in a reading vlog as well, so I won't say too much about it. I really liked this book. It's about a student in Taiwan, and she is gay and she's sort of coming to terms with this, but she's really struggling. At the start of the book, she meets a girl that she was at high school with, who they start a relationship, and she then basically runs away from this relationship. She's trying to sort of figure out what she wants from her life, but deep down she's deeply ashamed of being gay. She tries to fall in love with men, and it's just, it's not working. This is told through notebooks, and you also get this other narrative where there's a crocodile that is in a human costume, that is trying to pretend he's not a crocodile, and everyone's out crocodile hunting, and he's there like, oh, I'm a human, which was quite interesting. It was a bit of a heavy-handed metaphor, but I think that this paints a very good picture of Taiwan in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, and how difficult it was to be queer then. There's quite a lot of humour in this book, and it's very well written. There are lots of bits I tabbed and underlined. Like it was a very good read. I think for me, I've read one of her other books, Last Words from Montmartre, and I like this one a lot more, but I find her writing a little bit it's hard to explain. It's like, I find it a bit opaque, just that I feel like she talks about people but without giving you enough context to really feel like you know that person and you care. So, for example, in Last Words from Montmartre, she's talking about a lover that she's left behind, but you only ever hear it from her perspective. She's very much just talking about how much she loves her, but you don't get enough about this person, about their relationship to connect to it. And I kind of felt the same with this a little bit, that, you know, she talks about this woman that she's in love with a lot, but we never really get too much about that woman. So you're just left with all of her feelings of longing and desire, which is fine. But I struggle when things are not like I struggle to create connections with characters when you feel like you're sort of removed from them and you're just hearing about them through this from this woman's perspective and her feelings. Like you never really hear the reciprocated feelings. So I would recommend, but this one I definitely liked a little bit less. And then the last book that I finished is a book that I had a strange relationship with. I also read this in a reading vlog, and that's Moby Dick by Herman Melville. This is a book that's been on my shelf for quite a long time. My dad bought me this. It's one of his favourite books, and I really like parts of it. It's definitely a very strange book. I've never read a novel like this before. So yes, obviously you kind of know what Moby Dick is about, but there were so many chapters in this that were not really about their sort of whaling voyage, that were just about whales, about the history of whales, about the history of boats, about like different whaling implements, about words and their origins and the skeleton of a whale. I would say that like over half of this was not like plot based at all. It was just Ishmael's sort of random musings on whale related things, which I like. Those are probably the bits that I like the best. It was when we were on the boat with all of the characters. I felt like you never really got to know the characters very well because so much of it were these random musings. So then when I was getting a very long description of how they had caught this whale and they were going to use the blubber for this, and I was just sort of lost interest a little bit. And you don't like, I was 100 pages from the end and there's still been no, like there had been mention of Moby Dick because the whole thing is Captain Ahab's lost his leg to Moby Dick and he wants to go and kill him. But you don't even hear of someone seeing Moby Dick until about 100 pages from the end, which was very surprising. And then it felt a little bit rushed. So yeah, I would kind of recommend this one. It's unlike any book I've ever read. As a classic, it's very interesting. I liked the sort of voice that you get. Ishmael's very amusing. But yeah, just be warned that there are a lot of tangents. There are a lot of random chapters about random things, which I did like. It's just a very long book. It's over 600 pages and I was sort of starting to lose interest towards the end. So those are all the books that I finished. And then there are 2 books that I DNF'd. I DNF'd both of these in a reading vlog where I was reading sort of my most anticipated books off of my TBR. So yeah, these were quite big disappointments. The first one is Sabbath Theatre by Philip Roth. This book was, I don't know, it felt like it was trying to be really risky. There was a lot of talk about sex. There was like talk of masturbating over gravestones a lot. And yeah, a lot of like really in-depth descriptions of how many women this man's mistress was going to sleep with and what exactly she was going to do with them and blah, 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 blah. And I just felt like he was trying to shock me, which made me lose interest. And it was quite a long book. It was almost 500 pages. And then I went onto Goodreads to have a look and it seemed like it was going to be a continuation of the same. And yeah, I just decided to put this one down after about 120 pages. The other one is the Autobiography of Alice B. Tolkas by Gertrude Stein. I'm really disappointed by this one just because I really loved the edition that I have. I just donated it to charity because I didn't like the book, but it had really beautiful paintings in it. So I'm quite upset about that. This book was just a case of not a book for me. I think as well, as I was saying, I was really in the mood for beautiful writing this month, and this book is like the opposite of that. It's very matter of fact. So it's about Alice B. Tolkas is a sort of fictional character telling the story of Gertrude Stein and all of the people that she knows. So it's very much about painters. She lived in Paris in the 1920s, so it's about painters and writers. You have Picasso, you have Ernest Hemingway, but I just wasn't really that interested in it. It's sort of, I'd heard that the artists and painters and people that she writes about didn't agree with her representation of them. It felt kind of gossipy, it felt name droppy, and I just, yeah, I wasn't liking the writing style. I put this one down after about 100 pages. So this has been quite a long rambly video, but that is my month of reading in July. It has been such a good month. As I say, 9 out of 10 of the books that I read I would like highly recommend. Moby Dick with, yeah, maybe a bit less so, but I just still enjoy it, so yeah, I can't really complain. Yeah, so yeah, I'd love to hear what you've been reading and what your favourite book of the month is, and I will speak to you again soon.